So I'm Pierre Simon, the founder of Startup Dream Team. First, I'd like to thank Parisoma for hosting us tonight. So really briefly, Startup Dream Team is an 8-week summer program for interns and young entrepreneurs whose goal is really to create an environment highly favorable for team creation and also to create a kind of teamwork-based framework to discover others with the same interest and complementary skills. So we have half of the person of the program live in the same place. We have them be really proactive in the organization of a speaker series, which includes Hiten Shah tonight. We have Will Young next week. We have Robert Scoble, Aaron Levy also, and also different hackathons that we organize regularly. The first one will be this Sunday. So next week the speaker is Will Young, from director of Zappos San Francisco office, and also really involved in the downtown project in Las Vegas. So it's Tony Hsieh's project to really make the downtown Las Vegas more dynamic through the entrepreneurial scene. So right now I won't be more take longer and give the mic to Hiten. Thanks.
How is everyone?
Amazing.
Have you had a long day? I hate this fucking mic. All right. So I might not use it all the time. What do I got today? I don't know. Okay, so I hear Aaron Levy from Box.net is going to come talk to you guys. Can you make sure you ask him, I'll be disappointed if you don't, about who actually tweets for him? Yeah, so make sure you ask him that, because I still haven't got that answer from him. And the last time I saw him was on Airtime. And I showed him my kid, and he was tripping out because he's not married or anything, I don't think. Anyways, and my kid was screaming. I guess I want a quick show of hands. Has anyone here ever met me before?
Only on message.
Cool. Only on what? Ah, gotcha. All right. Are you Woody?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, Woody. I didn't think you were real. And you have a Lollap shirt, so I should have known. Awesome. Cool. Well, it's nice to meet you. I hear you're working for free. Okay, good. All right. Well, that's all right. Anyways, we'll talk later. So how many of you are actually interns working at a company over the summer, I guess? Okay. And what about the rest of you? Do you have your own startup? How many of you have your own startup right now? Okay. And anybody else want to talk about anybody else who's here? Like, I'm just trying to get a gauge of my audience.
Banking.
Huh?
Investment banking.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anybody else? Investment banking? When are you going to quit?
Soon.
Oh, congratulations. What are you going to do?
Intern first job.
Really? It's kind of lame. Just kidding. All right, so I'm talking for you guys. I'm the first one. I always like being the best, so it's up to you to make me the best out of all the speakers, which I know is a high bar, because you have Aaron Levy from Box, and he's more of a comedian than me. So I think he actually was the class clown in high school. That's probably another question you should ask him. Was he the dork or the class clown? I think that's a good question for him. Anyways, enough about questions for him. I have a fascination with him. He's just crazy. So I guess I want to make sure you guys get what you want, so please don't hesitate to ask questions or interrupt me or tell me I suck. That's okay. I do. What I'll do is I'll just start with my own story, and then we can sort of go from there. And I already started hating on some of the guys here, so it's great. So first of all, since I was 6 years old, my dad told me to be an entrepreneur. And he is a physician, and my mom was a physician as well. And they're both anesthesiologists. And since I was 6 years old, my dad was like, "Hey, you shouldn't work for anyone." And I didn't really understand that, because like everyone works for someone, and I didn't really know what an entrepreneur was at the time. So as time progressed, he started kind of explaining it to me. And for him, what he was like, look, I went to all this school, and now I'm a doctor, and I don't use my brain. Oh man, so I didn't understand that either. And eventually, after many stories and things like that, what ended up happening was he explained, I understood it. And what he meant was, like, my job's sort of monotonous. I go to work, he's an anesthesiologist, so he makes sure people, wake up after surgery or whatever. He even told me surgeons don't use their brain. And for him, it was just like, I don't have any challenges in my work. So he likes teaching students. So that's what he also does, and, works at a public university as a doctor as well. And so I don't know any better but to be an entrepreneur. I've only had one job in my life. I interned at a medical devices company in high school. And it was actually a company that's public now that my dad knew the two founders when they were in a garage making their their technology, and he kind of helped them out. After that, I kind of didn't want a job again because I didn't really fit in or understand how to work for anyone else. And, I fear the day of having to work for someone else because I don't think it's inevitable, but if it happens, I'll probably piss a lot of people off. So beyond that, fast forwarding, I had a bunch of businesses in high school that were just random things so I could just pay for fixing up my rice rocket. I had a Honda Accord with a turbo in it, and I didn't pay for the car. It was my 16th birthday present, and my dad was like, I'm not going to give you anything else. Not really, but basically. And I just decided to fix it up and all that. Don't put a turbo in a Honda Accord. It doesn't work. That you paid for yourself. I could have done better things with the money. And so we sold a bunch of car parts and stuff like that and made money. Then in college, I had a whole bunch of offline businesses, which I won't get into. But essentially, I came out of college with about $1 million. That was my money. And at that time, my now co-founder was still in high school. It was senior year for him, and he had one customer paying him $3,500 a month for SEO. So he was basically doing internet marketing for them. And he was like 16 at the time, probably 16. And he had that, and we decided to basically start a company while he was going to college. And so he went to college. He went to Cal State Fullerton. I was already out of college, and we started my first company with him, my first internet company with him, which was called Advantage Consulting Services. And what we essentially did was internet marketing for everyone from a bunch of Fortune 500 companies to startups and a whole bunch of companies you've never heard of as well. So we grew that business to about 20 people and about $4 or $5 million in revenue the last year before we decided to stop. And in the meantime, neither of us were technical, so we didn't know how to program or anything like that, but we were making money. So what we did is we hired almost, I don't know what the number is, but like 70 to 80, maybe even 100 designers, developers, design shops, development shops, some for projects for our customers, some for our own projects. We ended up trying to build 20 different businesses, essentially, or startups, however you want to call it, using our own money from the consulting company. And at that point, we got really lucky with one of the ones. It's called Crazy Egg. We launched it in 2005, at the end of 2005. And it basically what it does is it still exists today. It basically shows you where people click on your web pages. We were one of the first products to do that for you, just by putting a JavaScript on a site. And so that product, what I like to say about it now that 6 years later, is there's 4 employees that work on it, and it's more profitable than Apple per employee. I don't remember how many they have, but they have a lot more than us. And so, it's a business that keeps growing, and we completely bootstrapped it. It was our own money, and we didn't take any investment. And basically what we were doing is we decided to build a second product, and we spun it out and raised money for it, which is my current company called Kissmetrics. The easy way to describe it is most of you are probably familiar with Google Analytics. So Google Analytics tells you kind of what happened on your site. We actually tell you who did it. So we tie all the data to individual customers, and we call it customer analytics today. So it's kind of me and my businesses. Along the way, the one thing that if you don't leave with anything else, I'll tell you the one thing you should leave with if you don't already understand this, which is since we tried 20 different things, we had a lot of pain and hardship on trying to figure out like what the right thing to build is or whether people will buy something and stuff like that. So I'm a big advocate for the lean startup principles and the idea of customer development and doing all that stuff. I know there's a lot of people talking about it and probably some misconceptions about it, but at the end of the day, after trying all those different things, I've come to the realization that there is actually a process of going about figuring out what people actually want, and what I would say is what people actually want to pay for. Because regardless of whether you're a B2B or a B2C service, someone ends up paying you at some point. So I like to say, Paul Graham likes to say, build something people want. I would rather say, build something people want to buy. So the thing I would leave you guys with is, if you are considering starting a company, or even if you're an intern at a company today and they're not doing customer development, or you're not thinking about doing customer development, you should be, because that's one of the fastest, easiest, most structured ways to figure out whether what you're building is something people actually want to buy. And there's a great book by Steve Blank called The Startup Owner's Manual. Are any of you familiar with that book and Steve Blank? Okay. You guys aren't practicing it over there, so we're going to have to talk later. No, I'm talking to you, Woody. But anyways, so since most of you aren't familiar with it, I'm actually going to give you the cheat sheet to it. So the cheat sheet is basically this book called The Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development. The URL is custdev.com. If you guys ever email me and ask me a dumb question, I'm probably going to point you to that book, because that book is where you should start with everything. So the smart questions would be more like, here's my hypothesis, here's what I've learned, can you help me? And that's where kind of I start. So, and the whole idea is that any idea that you guys have, it's just a hypothesis. It's just an assumption. You don't know if it's true. There's no kind of proof you're going to get by looking in the world and trying to see if it's true. The only proof you're actually going to get is by talking to people and understanding if that is true based on the problems they tell you they have. And I didn't say that you go to them and try to sell them on a product. It's actually more about learning from them and understanding what problems they actually have. And there's a whole process around it. I'm not going to bore you with it, but that's the one takeaway I would recommend, if nothing else, from me. Let's see. So do you guys want to hear more about that? You want to ask me some questions? I'm better with questions. So anybody? Come on. Make it good. Woody, what do you got? What do you mean?
What are they missing on? I'm at nighttime at this point.
Oh, on Message Me. We'll have to talk later. Yeah, that's the startup he's working at right now. Nobody has any questions, because I can keep rambling, but I see dead faces. Some people are going to sleep. That sucks. Here,
How many customers do you have?
do I have? Thousands.
Thousands.
Thousands of paying customers.
Thousands.
I don't know. Which business?
You,
Which business?
it's matters.
Thousands. Not 10,000, but thousands. Yeah. Anybody else? Anything more useful?
What would be the hypothesis to test? Like, how do I choose which hypothesis I will test?
Okay. Anyone have an idea? Anyone have an idea they're willing to share? Come on.
Have a landing page?
No. Anyone have an idea they're willing to share? Not an idea for that. Like an idea you're actually thinking of doing.
Selling huaraches, Mexican sandals.
Selling Mexican sandals? Okay. Who's the buyer?
Who's the buyer? In this case, it would be hip 20-somethings that like alternative footwear.
Alternative footwear. Okay. Tell me more about the footwear. Just curious. Like.
I call it the original artisan shoe.
Okay.
Handmade leather, and we find that the production is being exported to China. Oh, well, hello there. So it's so production is going to China. So what's happening is that the original art of huarache making, it's being lost. It's going away. So what I'm trying to do, or what I've thought about doing, is find a way to keep it alive, in the form of partnering up with, like in this case, multicultural fraternities and organizations with Latino-based interest to to have a win-win-win situation in terms of the huarache makers overseas get work, the organizations get a quality handmade product and a cut of the proceeds, and then obviously we as the entrepreneurs get a percentage as well.
Sure. So what he did there, like you do with most ideas when you first come up with them, is I asked him what his customer was. So, and if I didn't ask him that, I would have thought it's a consumer. But he basically said that there's people that, let's just call them hipsters, for lack of a better word. Nothing against hipsters. He mentioned that his customer's a hipster, but his distribution channel is these organizations that care about that culture. Correct? So all of a sudden, he just
Kind of a shift there, but
no, for better or worse, he decided that he's got two types of customers, right? One is an organization that he's got to basically convince that this is something that they want to spread for whatever reason. And on the other side, he's got, customers that actually are the end user that are going to buy it, right? That's fine. So you basically, what you do is, in your case, you'd have a hypothesis for both of them, right? So for the, and I'm going to give you the statement like I would, kind of put it out there. So first of all, I would take out the idea of the sandals, meaning forget your product or your solution as they call it, and let's focus on trying to understand if people have the problem that you're trying to solve. So, on one hand, you have these, I'll call them cultural centers. Just, I know they're not that, but let's call them that. So you have culture centers. What you're kind of trying to say is culture centers have a problem spreading the culture they represent.
in a sense, yeah.
So that would be like a hypothesis. Maybe you can get a little more refined, but that's kind of what I would start with as a hypothesis. And then just going down from there, and again, this book describes it, but it's always fun to go through it. There's some risky assumption. So what do you think the riskiest assumption is?
The riskiest assumption is that these organizations care as much about the culture as I do, so I'm overestimating their care for this product or for this art form, if you will.
Right, or spreading the culture.
Yeah.
Right, so I mean, it's nicer if you can get a little bit, deeper into it, but that's okay. I think that's reasonable, right? So that's the riskiest assumption. Great. So let's go to the other customer, and then we'll come back. So the other customer is that end user that's going to buy those sandals, right? So what you can say is basically the people that are associated with these, I guess, cultural centers have a problem with what? Well, how would you describe it?
That they're, I guess in the Greek system, coming from San Diego State, the sororities, the fraternities, they got a lot of attention, as they should. They do a lot of great things, in terms of philanthropy and whatnot. But, you find that these multicultural fraternities and organizations, they're, afterthoughts. No one really, is going out to them to try to, work with them on what they need or what's going on. So I think that's their biggest challenge, is how do they get exposure? How do they raise money for their philanthropies?
Is this the individual people or the culture centers? I was talking about the individual people.
Oh, the individual people
yeah.
in the actual centers?
Yeah.
I guess their problem is that they're not in the limelight. They're not getting the same exposure as their other counterparts.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the end user, the person buying these things. Is that what you mean?
By buying them, I want them to feel that they've contributed to the spread. They've contributed to.
Okay.
They've helped out.
So what you can say is something along the lines of that would be like, they have a problem representing the organization they care about, right? Would you say that's true?
Yeah.
Kind of. So what's the riskiest assumption there?
That they already represented it. That they feel they represented it just fine without these sandals.
Okay, that's interesting. I might go further on that one and say, since they have to buy the sandals, that the riskiest assumption is actually the fact that they have to pay for these, and maybe there's cheaper ways that they can represent culture, right? That they might be already doing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's really the risky assumption, which is they don't want to buy, they don't want to pay for anything, right? So that'd be an example. So then, what I would essentially do is talk to the different people. And don't talk to them about your sandals or any of that stuff, but just talk to them about questions oriented around these problems and this hypothesis that you've described.
Okay.
Right? And you don't even say, it's not usually ideal to say, what's your problem or what's the biggest pain you have, although even the book might suggest that you do that, because people aren't really that good at telling you what's most painful to them, especially when it's fuzzy like this sometimes. So what you really want to do is get kind of stories out of them. So you want to ask them tell me about a time when you tried to, influence people in your association about culture, right? Like, what are things that you've tried to do, right? And what I like to do is usually your number's like anywhere from 15 to hundreds of people that you talk to, depending on how big your target segment is and stuff. And what you're trying to do is get stories out of everybody. And then at the end of it, you stop when you feel like you're getting bored. Meaning like, I've heard this before, I've already talked to 20 people, I see a pattern, or I think I see a pattern, and then you basically analyze the information. So you have to be really good at sort of asking questions that are unbiased, that don't bias them into a specific answer. So there's a big skill set you need to gain there. And then also you need to be able to find the pattern in all those stories and be able to record those in enough detail so that you can even get things like if something sounds painful to someone, like they say, oh, that takes me 6 hours a day, right? That's like something you want to kind of mark and point out in the story when you hear it. So yeah, go ahead.
What's a good sample space when you really start?
When you get bored, like literally when you get bored. So yeah.
You could also be picking the same type of people, right?
The tighter your customer segment, the better off you're going to be, right? So, and that's really one of the, I don't want to call it dirty secrets, but that's one of the things that people really kind of forget, which is like, it really is about having a narrow enough customer segment that you can start with so that, because what ends up happening is some people will go through this process, actually a lot of people, and they'll talk to, let's say 30, 40 people, and they'll be like, I don't have a pattern. And then, you'll talk to them, and they're like, oh, I just talked to teenagers, right? Or I just talked to moms, instead of talking to moms that send their kids to daycare, or teenagers that, use messaging apps all the time, for example, right? So the tighter you can get on your customer segment, the better off you're going to be.
So once you hit that customer segment and have concluded it, then you move on to another phase. Let's say you're a teenager and say, okay, this could be a target segment, but shall I go and test?
It depends what you learn. If you talk to that segment and you learn they don't have any pain, you might have found some nugget around what you would call a pivot, although that's been bastardized, but essentially you might learn something from those people that leads you to your next step, which could be you build something for them. Or it could be you decide to change direction and ask a new set of people different questions because you thought you heard some pain there that wasn't exactly what you were thinking. So you might hear that these culture centers have the problem, but he can't match the solution he has in mind with the users. But there's some other match there, right? Like he might just realize that they actually have a problem managing all their people. And he might go build a project management app for them, or not project management, member management, right? Because he learns that that's their bigger pain. But you don't get that if you're trying to sell them the solution, right? That's why it's not about moving on. It's about understanding what the next step is based on that information you get. So, yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for being daring. Anybody else? Okay.
What are some mistakes made with your previous startups, and like, how would you do it differently, I guess?
Sure. And even if it's not mistakes of mine, I think it's more patterns of mistakes I've seen, which would probably be more useful to you guys, because everyone makes mistakes, but it's really about like what are more common mistakes or ones that people fall into. So I think one of the mistakes a lot of people end up making is they think they need to build something to actually get any validation on their idea, right? And that is completely not true anymore. And I say anymore because we have these wonderful books, professors, I guess people like me, and also so many people that are connected to the internet that like you can reach that customer no matter who they are, whether they're a marketing manager at a Fortune 500 company or some teenager. They'll all talk to you. I mean that's just the way the world is today. And also, more importantly, there's processes to help you understand how you can gather these insights. So I think the pitfall people make is, I need to go build it. Otherwise, I'm not going to know whether I'm doing the right thing, which means they end up spending anywhere from 2 weeks if you're really diligent about building something simple to 6 months or a year of building something that nobody ends up wanting. So I'd say you can really test these assumptions before you do that, which we just talked about, right? Like he could easily go and like try to get those sandals made and try to sell them or something, which I think would be jumping the gun, right? Because you'd lose a lot of learning along the way. So I think people try to optimize for revenue, or they try to optimize for getting someone to use a product, when I would actually be optimizing around learning about your riskiest assumption at any given step, right, versus trying to make money or anything like that. And I'm not saying you don't make money, but the only way you're going to make money is if you understand your customer or your user's problem better than anybody else. So that's probably the biggest one, and I've even given you guys a solution. But people think they need to raise money to get started on something, when actually the opposite is true. And the reason I say that is most people that are raising money today, they're either in one of two categories. One category is they've already made investors money. So they've had an exit in their past company that they ran and started and made them 3 times the investor's money or 10 times or whatever. And so they will get money because investors want to back a horse that's won before, so to speak. On the other side, if you're trying to raise money and you kind of think you just need to raise money before you can get started, you're competing with people that already started and built something or validated the problem and actually built something and have some amount of traction, which you can basically do without spending any money, honestly, today. So what I would say is, like, I'd encourage you in general as a rule of thumb to get as far as you can before you raise any money or think about raising money, because it's either a distraction or you're just not going to get it. So we tried raising money for Crazy Egg. We never got it. Now businesses like that get funded. And I'm very thankful for actually not getting the money, because now I have a bootstrap business that I never raised any money for that keeps growing, right? That kind of makes it so I can do whatever I want. If I didn't want to work, I didn't have to work because I have that business. So that was a blessing in disguise for me. But at the same time, I think people keep falling into the trap, especially very early on, that they need to raise money before they can do anything else. So if if you have an idea, you can always do customer development and figure out whether it's a good idea, and then figure out how to either learn how to code yourself, which I would highly recommend to any of you that don't know how, and then actually try to build something based on that learning.
So say you validated your idea with customers already, and then you're kind of in that process where you're not a technical person and you're trying to build that MVP to kind of further along the customer development for raising money. How would you kind of go about either finding a technical co-founder or kind of actually building?
Learn it yourself. Just learn how to code yourself. I know I'm being dogmatic about it, but it's true. Like, you have to have some fundamental understanding of it anyways. And in parallel, if you're kind of worried about something or think you have a good chance of finding someone that can help you as a co-founder or whatever, then look for that person as well, right? I think that even engineers, and all the engineers in the room can argue with me if they want to, appreciate when someone who's not as technical does understand what's going on, right? Because to me, like, I'm not technical, but after hiring all those people and working with some awesome engineers, I kind of fake it or understand it very deeply enough to talk about it. I can read documentation. I have a local copy of Kissmetrics on my laptop. I can screw it up if I want to. So, that's a level of trust you're going to have to gain with engineers at some point. You're better off just trying to figure out how to code. It's not that hard, right? And I'm not marginalizing it, but like, to get an MVP out or do something, relatively simple to start with, it'll even force you to think simpler about whatever you're doing if you can't code yet. Other options are the regular Elance, Craigslist, things like that if you have some money to spend, right? I learned by paying people, but you don't have to, right? Like, I would probably try to learn it myself today if I had nothing better to do, right? Or if I was thinking of an idea and didn't have an engineer around me yet. You'll also see it's easier to find an engineer if you start to learn how to code, right? Because there's someone around you that probably you can ask questions to, right, as you get stuck. Or people on IRC, or people on, IM or whatever that you can find that can help, right? So that's a great way to even build a relationship and find people. Also, IRC is your best friend if you're not technical and you want to sort of jump in. So, yeah.
You took the lean startup at the beginning, and you mentioned there were misconceptions about it. So do you think of something that people misunderstand about it?
Sure. So, yeah, great. So I think one of the big things people misunderstand is that lean means cheap, right? Lean actually comes from Toyota, which isn't a cheap company, and it refers to lean manufacturing. And that's where Eric Ries sort of came up with it, which is the idea that you're wasting the minimal amount of anything, not just money, to basically learn, right, and build your product. So I think the biggest misconception is that, oh, you're a lean startup, you're cheap. And a lot of people that call themselves lean startup even sort of make that mistake, right? We're a lean startup. We're not cheap. We have an office. We have salespeople we pay well. We have engineers we pay well. We have marketing that we spend on, right? Like, we have, coffee maker, right? So I'm just saying, like, people, that's probably the biggest misconception that I hear, or, that helps me determine if someone gets it or not, right? So I think that's probably the biggest one. Most of the other ones are little nuances on, I'm a lean startup, I put up a landing page, right? And then I ask the person, well, why did you put up the landing page? Oh, I wanted to collect email addresses. And I go, well, what did you want to learn? Oh, I don't know. I wanted to collect email addresses, right? That's a misconception too, which is that it's any given tactic, right? The whole idea is that, and I get a little more philosophical on it, but basically, the only thing I'd say human beings in general have against us is time. I can't think of anything that's in your way than the time you have, right? Whether it's on this planet or in this company that you're in as an intern or in the startup that you're building, right? And for me, the lean startup is simply helps me waste way less time to figure out what I should be doing for my business. So that's kind of another, that's the way I look at it, right? And I don't try to think about it as anything more than that, right? Which is like, I want to waste the least amount of time possible. Can't even think about the countless amount, well, I know how much money, it was too much. But my most famous debacle was, in one of those 20 ideas we had was, we wasted $1 million trying to build a hosting company that never launched. So I would say that I don't want to ever have to do that again. I wouldn't want anyone I talk to ever have to, waste time or waste money. And that's not to mention the probably year and a half we wasted messing around with that idea while we were doing other things. That's the way I look at it, and that's how I'd look at it if I were you guys. Yeah.
When you first get started with something, and it may be like a website, mobile app, like what is the kind of investment that you would think is okay to make on actually advertising and getting your initial user base? Because that can really go pretty high.
So even today with Kissmetrics, we spend, how can I put it? We haven't spent any real money on advertising in a traditional sense of even pay-per-click. Our competitors like advertising on our terms, they can waste the money. Or even like banner ads or even Facebook ads. We do them sometimes, but it's not anything that we see as a scalable channel for us today. And we've raised, $4 million so far and are making money, so we could spend the money. Instead, what we did is early on, for $0, we actually built out a very strong Twitter following, because we noticed that a lot of people that were into web analytics and design and all that stuff that's related to what we do marketing, they were on Twitter. And so we just built an audience there and gained their trust, right? And from there, we started blogging. All those things are things you can do inexpensively, pretty much for free. So if you're already thinking about spending money, I think you've got it wrong, right? Today, between Twitter, Pinterest, Salesforce, I could go on about the platforms that exist today to help you reach customers very cost effectively. Even today, in a market where I believe my competitors or even larger companies in my space are spending $20, $50, $1,500 for a lead, we're spending $7.35 for each lead, because we started with this low-cost strategy for acquiring customers. And it's been very helpful where, even if we launch a new feature, we're essentially usually doing our own press, right, by putting it on our blog and things like that, because it gets a ton of traffic. These days, I'll be disappointed if one of our articles, on average on our articles, we don't get more than I'd be disappointed if we get less than 150 tweets on, a blog post. I think our average is about 200 right now, right? And that's just the amount of tweets we get, which leads to traffic and all that. So I wouldn't think of it the way you might be. I'd be thinking of it more like, how do I reach that customer? A lot of times, I used to say, in the beginning, you're not trying to do things that scale. So if for whatever reason you had to pay to reach a customer, you're not trying to pay to reach thousands of them, right? So that's what I used to say. But these days, I would say that if you come up with a channel and a strategy that allows you to bring customers in for almost free, that's a good thing. And that's something that I would consider working on, so that you can actually find your customer and go talk to them in the way I said. again, that being said, if we're only talking about talking to 20 customers or 100 customers, there's no marketing you're really doing there, right? You can go find those customers in almost any category, right? And if you have any examples or want to talk through them, I'm happy to help and talk through them right now. So, yeah.
I said that I've always been a little bit confused about it. So you said you cost you $735 like per lead.
Yeah.
So like, is that like all the employee hours that you guys?
Yes, everything.
Divided by the number of leads?
Everything. The amount we spend on our blog, the amount of, we even pay guest writers on it now, the cost of the person that manages the blog, who's a full-time manager of the blog. He's our social media guy, I guess. So yeah, it's all inclusive of every cost. We did the calculation associated with our blog and inbound marketing efforts and all that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sure you hear a lot of ideas, like business ideas, startup ideas. What to you would characterize a good idea? What are you sort of bullish on?
There is no bad idea, right? There's only, I would say, they say bad execution, but that's not even true, in my opinion. I think there's a bad approach, right, is what I would call it, right? And the approach would be, I have this idea, I'm going to go get it built. Or I have this idea, again, I'm going to go raise money. Right? I think the right approach is, I have this idea, I'm going to go figure out if it's a good idea. Right? And the process I talked about is figuring out if it's a good idea. He had an idea. I mean, my opinion doesn't matter, right? Because he's got a market and a customer, and I'm not it. And even if I was it, I'm only one vote, right, for the idea. Right? And vote meaning, if I have that problem, that's only one person that has that problem. He needs to find a lot of other people like that. So I don't diss on ideas. I instead would help someone get a better idea in terms of something that might be more targeted towards a specific customer segment, because I think that's really important today, right? And things like that. But most ideas are fine. I mean, dog hotels make money, right? Lots of things make money. What is it? Chia pets make money. So I don't think there's a bad idea. I think it's just more about figuring out what problem you solve.
Yeah. Are there sectors or business models and things like that that you're bullish on, or in general, trends-wise?
Not really. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on in the world today, and at the same time, there's a lot of things that can be disrupted based on everything around us, right? So a lot of people will tell you mobile and things like that. I just think that at this point, the world is changing so fast. If I came up with a trend today and I told you one, it's probably too late, right? Too late meaning it doesn't matter, right? So yeah, I think there's lots of stuff's going to be disrupted. If you're really focused on trends or disrupting something, then find something super boring that nobody cares about. But that's, interesting enough that you want to solve the problem. And honestly, find your passion. If your passion is building a better search engine, fuck it, go do it, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. I think anything's open, because the Google guys, if people kept telling them that was a bad idea of building a search engine, we wouldn't have Google. Yeah.
My question was, if you are a first-time entrepreneur, right, like I think most of you.
Don't do it. Just kidding. Go ahead.
The question is that there's a choice. There are two types of businesses now, right, in the real world, where, as you said, there's a real product, there's a pair of shoes, and you want to sell it at a markup or whatever it might be to a real person. Then there's a second model where there's a Twitter kind of model where, when somebody says, the one line of Twitter says anything you want in 140 characters or less, which is not like a real viable business. It's like a lot of people scoff at it. But which would you recommend people, think about? Is it better to go after the ones where you right away see how the money flows, or is it better to go after anything else?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think it boils down to what your strengths are, right? So, and sometimes you can't figure that out until you just try something, right? I think there are models like Twitter, but those are few and far in between, or whatever the saying is. Like you don't see those kind of things come up every day, right? But there are other ideas like Dropbox that you probably could have done the process I'm talking about and came to an answer, but yet it's huge. And in some ways, it's kind of like Twitter, where it's lots of users and but they're charging customers. So I don't worry as much about path to revenue, but you need to know what you're getting into. So if you build a Twitter doesn't become valuable to someone like an advertiser and make them want to pay for it until it has at least 100 million users. And by the way, that number just, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, was 10 million users. So if you can figure out or have people around you that understand how to get to 100 million users, that's probably a better idea. Or that's probably, you're more likely to succeed with an idea like that. While, you know, a lot of the either B2B or like Dropbox prosumer or consumer ideas where you're charging the customer, there are more straightforward paths to revenue, but usually those are much slower growth. Like what grows faster, Dropbox or Twitter? Most likely Twitter, I believe, right? It's free for the user and there's a lot of network effects that don't exist in something like Dropbox. That being said, they have one big channel for them, which is their referral program, which is super famous now. And I don't know anyone else that has really duplicated it well either, which is something to think about. But, you know, I'd say it just depends, and it's just more knowing about what you get into. So one of the pet peeves I have is somebody coming up with a consumer idea, and then when I ask them, well, how are you going to grow it? Them having no idea. So I'll give a random example. So Woody's friend, right, has a new company. It's a consumer internet company. It is one of those ideas where unless you get to 100 million users, you're not going to make a lot of money. I'm an advisor. I'm going to invest in it. These guys know how to do that. If anyone in this room, besides them probably, or somebody like the people who started Twitter, or early Facebook employees, or whoever, came to me with that idea, I wouldn't laugh at them, I'd be like, are you sure you can get to that scale? And it's not that, oh, you haven't done it before, it's just that, do you know the things it's going to take that you have to do to get there? So these people are essentially, for lack of a better term, experts in growth and virality and building a product that's super engaging and that even monetizes, right? And without that, I wouldn't have any trust, neither would investors in their ability to do this, right? And they'd have to prove it first. And they haven't proven it yet for this business, but they're on their way, right? And this is a company that's like 6 weeks old, not even. So, you know, and they're getting pretty far pretty fast. So I'd say that for them, that's a good idea. And the founder there and the team, they've sort of done that stuff before. And, you know, people have a lot of faith in them to do it. Now, I can probably count, if I really tried really hard, not more than 100 people that can do that same kind of thing that I can think of, that I either know or know of. While when I think of B2B, or B2B or charging the customer for something, I almost think of anyone in this room can probably pull it off. Does that mean that none of you should start a consumer internet company? No. But that means that you probably need to do more homework to understand very deeply why Twitter is what it is today, why even Dropbox is what it is today, or why Facebook is what it is today, and really see if you're up for that challenge, right? Otherwise, pick something easier for you to do, or something that's more around your talents or your passion. I will say though that at the end of the day, a passionate, aggressive entrepreneur can probably figure anything out. But even those, it takes time to be that person. Right? Yeah.
So you mentioned the figure of like 100 million as like, well, you have 100 million users, you can start making profits or whatever. But so what is like the number of users a person should have before they talk to other people about their product? And like not just talk to other people, but like actually talk to people who may want to invest in their product, and not just come up.
Is this a consumer product or any product?
So it's the kind of product that you were talking about, where maybe not.
I mean, if you, yeah, and I'll entertain you, although it's subjective, right? And it's really opinion, but I'll entertain you on it just for the sake of giving you some ideas. When it comes to those kind of consumer products where there's an obviously large market, what investors typically look for, and again, investors are a bunch that, you know, if someone tells you what they're looking for, then they could get it wrong, because like investors are all different. It depends on what they know and what they think and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's when you have some user base that is highly engaged. So it's not really about a number of users, it's more about how high is your retention. So for example, that company I mentioned that he works for at night, they will build an engaging product before they build a product that has even 5 million users, mostly. Because they realize if they try to get too many users too fast and it's not engaging and they're not retaining them, they're not really building a sticky business. So it's not that you have 100 million users and a million of them come back every month. It's more like you have 100 million users and 20, 30, 40 million of them come back every month, right? So you could even do that on a small scale and say, hey, I've got 10,000 users, but 5,000 of them come back every day. And if in that same vein, you have a market that's big enough, which is a consumer market and it's everyone in the world, or a high percentage of them that could use it that are on the internet or have mobile devices or whatever, it's a very obvious big market. And then your problems are going to be around growth and things like that, which are, if you have a highly engaging product as a consumer product, are much easier to solve, which is growth and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning that you knew that you were an entrepreneur when you were 6.
No, my dad told me.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know shit.
So that was the question. Like, you had the pressure to be an entrepreneur, on your own way to be one. What was the path? And do you think that it's something you learned, or something that you have to feel or discover?
Yeah, so I think it's a great nature versus nurture debate, right? I guess what I would say is that if you look at what's happening in the world, like in terms of a lot of people's parents in this room, or even their parents, if not your parents, stayed with the company they were at for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever it is, right? That was their career. Somebody famous once asked me about my career. I was already an entrepreneur, obviously, and I told him, I don't have a freaking career, right? What are you talking about? I'm an entrepreneur. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? I don't think of myself as having an entrepreneurial career. That doesn't make sense to me. That's what you did, back in the day. So the way I feel about it is that people who are nurtured and have some nature, whatever that means, of being entrepreneurial will be entrepreneurs faster in their lifetime. In all of my opinion is that, and this is based on trends that I read about and seen, in all of our lifetimes, it's very likely that we will all be entrepreneurs. Everybody. The reason is that if you look at how things are happening in the world today, the whole idea of working in a company forever doesn't really exist, right? So what's the next obvious thing? Maybe you're not going to have any retirement money, so you're going to have to start a cupcake business, right? Or a space cupcake business in 50 years. I don't know, right? So my belief today is that that you're going to need those skills either way. In fact, Facebook's really famous for saying we hire entrepreneurial people. What does that mean? That means that they can start their own shit, or they want to, or they have, right? Like if you think about some of the people even Dropbox hires and other companies hire, and all the acqui hires going on and all kinds of stuff, it's like people that started companies or tried to, right? So I'd say the trend is towards starting your own stuff, and I don't even mean that you start something and you raise money. I think the entrepreneurs in the next 20, 30 years are going to not need any venture capital. Most of them. In fact, most small businesses don't have any venture capital, and they're all startups, and they're all entrepreneurs. Some of my favorite entrepreneurs, actually, my favorite entrepreneurs. It's a very short list, but a lot of them are never raised money, right? And they just built a business, and that's what they do. And maybe they raise money later once they were already profitable and making a lot of money. That's it. So I don't think it's a debate anymore. I think to survive in the long run, you're going to need those skills of being able to build something on your own, no matter how small it is. Right? I mean, look, if you're happy with, like living in Kauai, and I'll say that because I could say South Dakota or something fucked up like that, but like whatever, right? Like I don't care, whatever your flavor is. Mine is Kauai. I want to live on that island or buy it or whatever. I like that island a lot. I can probably live there on $5,000 a month, right? So if I start a business somewhere on the internet or there, and I make $5,000 a month, I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own little startup or whatever, and I'm making that money and I'm happy. And I can go surf or do whatever it is I like to do, right? So to me, that's an entrepreneur as well, right? Which is if you're able to live within whatever means of the money you're making on your own, it's really important. Now, this is actually a point I'll add to it because it's super interesting. If you think you can do that when you raise money, you're wrong. You can only do that when you raise money if you sell the damn company for enough money that you don't even have to work for that person, or you only work for them for a little amount of time or whatever. So, you know, I'm not in favor of venture capital or not in favor of it. I've done both. At the end of the day, though, like, every entrepreneur needs to learn how to make money. So I would suggest to a lot of you or all of you that, like, try to make money, right, in whatever you try to do versus trying to raise money. You know, that's usually something I would kind of recommend in that vein for that reason. Yeah.
With the recent IPO of Facebook and before that Zynga, and in particular the large chunk of stock that Mr. Pincus owns in Facebook, how important would you say it is to view your market with a litigious eye, specifically with respect to his patenting application system, or rather application requests? How important is that for an entrepreneur to recognize those opportunities and to stake your claim in that manner? I know it's a little douchey, but like shit, it works, right?
Yeah, I mean, you said it's a little douchey. If he's okay with people calling him douchey, then he can do that. He's okay with that, right? So I actually think it boils down to personal opinion. Well, today, you know, at Kissmetrics, I'm sure there's patents we could have. I don't have any fucking patents. What am I going to do with a patent, right? I mean, that's my opinion, right? It's not quite like that. So, you know, he owns 12% of, or he is responsible, or his company is responsible for 12% of Facebook's revenue because he found the opportunity. Like, and he's aggressive, extremely aggressive. And that's how he runs his business, right? And when you're like that, you actually don't care about what anyone else thinks. And he's happy like that. But that's not for most of us, because we're not happy people like that, right? But for him, that's him. So I would say that, like, you know, there's people like that. But like, if you look at Mark Zuckerberg, I don't think he's that aggressive in that way that Mark Pincus is. They're both Marks, so maybe he is. I don't know. Anyways, it is what it is, right? That's your personal opinion and your ethics and your morality, or however you feel. That being said, like, I think, you know, I admire him for not giving a shit about what anyone else thinks about him, right? Because I wish I was like that in some ways. Probably be further along, at least monetarily, if nothing else.
Who is on your list of favorite entrepreneurs?
I think from a like more famous, interesting ones, I would say, you know, and this is a top of a lot of our lists, I guess, would be Elon Musk, because he actually, I think, made the top end of the amount of money from the PayPal acquisition, more than some of the other folks, and he's trying to get us to space as a consumer endeavor, right? And he's trying to make cars that are, hopefully in the next 50 years, maybe save the planet, right? That's admirable. He's going bold, and he's spending a lot of his own money to do it. So I'd say that he's somebody definitely to admire and think about, and he's also running 2 companies at once, or that's what it seems like. I don't know the truth of that or not, but that's what it looks like, and so that's admirable. I actually think there's a lot of entrepreneurs, but for different reasons. I admire Mark Pincus. Like I said, I told you guys why, because he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. Like, he's like, dude, I'm going to do what I got to do and what I think is right. And I think that last point I made, which is, if you're an entrepreneur, you better do what you think is right. No matter what that is. As screwed up as it may be, if that's you, that's you. Just do what you think is right. That's probably the best entrepreneurial advice I can give you, which is, if you think it's right, just do it. Right? It doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks. That's not going to help you. You know, and I know that might be a little bit of a selfish attitude, but like I said, you're doing what's right. So if you think it's right, do it. Right? And I don't think any of the investors in Zynga are upset at him right now, at least the private investors, right? Because he did what he thought was right and it worked. Now, if it didn't work, I'm sure they'd be kind of irritated with him, but that's a different story. They'd still give him money next time.
My question is about how to discover customer needs in building
B2B company. It's not so easy when you have 5 customers, but it should be very difficult when you have thousands of customers. How you do it?
What you're saying?
How you discover customer needs when you have thousands of customers? In which ways?
Yeah, I think it's hard in both cases, right? It's hard when you have a few customers because you don't know if you can trust that more people are going to have that same problem, so you probably need to talk to even more people. And then when you have a lot, if you have to be more diligent about understanding who you should listen to. And that means you might not piss, you have to, right? You might piss off certain people, but you choose based on data. Like we know there's a couple customer segments for us that are highly valuable to us. So we listen to them and we actually spend more time with them than other customer segments. In fact, in the near future, whatever that means, we'll probably be more deliberate about not wanting those other customers, right? And telling them to go to somebody else, which we already do, but we don't make it public yet, which we probably will, because we don't want that customer. And there's someone else that wants them and can service them better than we can. So I think, at the end of the day, if you went through the process well, you'll know who your customer is and who to listen to, right, in both scenarios.
I got a question. We are about to launch an application for the iPad. Now, there is a debate within the team. What kind of monetization should we pick? And it's either, let's say, subscription or on the content. Now, the issue here is the following. If we, let's say, pick the subscription monetization type, we're going to get some audience. And if further on we realize that another one was more profitable, how do we switch this audience from the previous type to a new type? Or I mean, what would be your advice? To get a small audience and get info based on them and then, I don't know, screw early adopters?
So it's like I was saying before, I think you're making an assumption that you need to get the thing out and make a decision to get the thing out before you can learn. So I would encourage you to think maybe a little more minimally about it and be like, well, do we really need to get it out to answer that question with a high level of confidence? So there's probably things you can do to answer that question right now. But talk to more people about, other things they buy and things like that. Not knowing what it is, I would just suggest that you talk to more people, but in the right way, right, to get that answer. Because you can probably get that answer without having to wait that long, right? And I know someone in the same situation today I spoke to today. They have, a bunch of mobile apps and some web app, and it's one thing, and they're actually transitioning their model. They started ad-supported, and now they're going to subscription, and it's a different customer and a different market. So, it's a pivot at that point if you want to call it that. But if you're diligent, I bet that company could have done it much faster. They already burned a decent amount of money for how much they had. And so I think he could have done it faster if he thought harder about it in the beginning. Right? I don't mean spend too much time. I just mean that just think more minimally. Be like, okay, we have this debate. The second you have a debate in your company about these kind of things, you know something's wrong. Meaning, not that you're not aligned, but it means you need to go figure it out before it's too late. Right? And I think it's too late when you figure it out a year from now. Right? That seems to be a critical risk right now in the business, which is what is our business model going to be? Right? Is it going to be high growth and ad driven, or is it going to be direct monetization or subscription, which are even two separate things, right? And sometimes it's like, even like, are there other products in the market charging a certain way, right? That's one way to look at it. Are there customers we're not thinking of today that could fit into one or the other of those business models, right? Things like that. So if I were doing something ad supported, one of the first things I do is start talking to advertisers of the type of product that I have, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So I get that you're a big supporter of customer development, and I agree that there is value in asking customers what they want.
I didn't say you ask them what they want.
You ask them what they want to pay for.
I didn't say that either. But keep going. Okay. I'll entertain you, but I didn't say that. Just want to clarify.
All right. So my question is, there are a lot of successful consumer products that arose because there's a disregard for what customers think they want. So how do you go about balancing between asking customers and following what you think is right?
Sure. So the misconception, that's another misconception for the misconception guy over there in the yellow shirt. You don't ask them what they want. you don't ask them what they're going to pay for, because there's a big bias that someone has when you ask them that, right? What you do is you try to talk to them in a way so that you can understand what problems they have, and then you figure out if more people have that problem across, many different interviews. So the thing you're not supposed to do is ask them what they want or ask them what they're willing to pay for. That's market research. Doesn't really work too well in this context because you have an unknown problem and an unknown solution. All you're trying to figure out is what's the actual problem. If you ask them what they want, that's not going to tell you anything. So I want to clear that up, right, and say that it's not about that. So that might already solve your kind of problem. And then on the consumer side, it's like, look, if you think about what Twitter solves today, right, it's a very, I would say, a deep psychological problem that people have, or some emotional thing that, someone probably could have figured out if they were diligent about trying to understand how information is delivered to people today. Now, I don't know if they would have came up with the same solution that Twitter did, but it is quite possible that if you think about what problems it solves in the world today, that someone could have figured out that that problem existed. Because it clearly solves problems for people. It solves problems for me. I can't actually live without it, right? And we've ran some surveys on their user base. People can't live without the product for a number of reasons. So I think it's easy to talk about outliers like Twitter, where you had founders that, again, were funded before multiple times for different things and that people were willing to take a bet on, right? And also that had enough money, time, whatever, to wait 2 years before the thing really hit, right? So I wouldn't focus on outliers, right? I'd focus more on the norm. So, and there really isn't a norm. Everything's outlier in a lot of ways, but it's really about finding, another thing I would say is the same, two different teams or founders hearing the same exact stories and problems are going to come up with a lot of times, very different solutions. I've seen that before, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with what you want to do in the world, what vision you have, and what skill set you and your team has, and your own outlook. So lean startup or customer development, those things don't disregard your own vision and what you want to do, right? Like in our company, we could have easily built a social analytics product. We could have easily built a business intelligence tool. Those are two things we evaluated and actually launched, or not launched, but released, and had people using them. But for some reason, that's not what we wanted to do, right? That was a decision we made, right? Because we felt like there's still a bigger problem that we were hunting, and we believe we've found it now. Right, so I think it always points to, and those are both decent businesses today. There's multiple companies in both those spaces doing extremely well. It's not for us though. So I think that don't disregard a team and a founder and an entrepreneur's own dreams.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we have more time. Or not.
To you, but no, we it's almost 8.
I don't care. It's up to you guys. I'm here to make sure you guys get value. So. Anybody else? Yeah, go for it.
According to you, how important is the competition, and when you need to take it to the competition?
Yeah, so the one time I think competition is most important is one time. There's 3 or 4 times I'll try to bring up is when you're trying to make a sale and the competition keeps coming up. Obviously they're important because they keep coming up, so you have to have answers, differentiation, and be able to learn from the fact that that customer you're trying to sell to is bringing up the competition. So that's one point I would say is probably one of the most important points, because otherwise you don't make money. Another point is when you enter a market, if you look at it and let's say there are no free tools and everyone's charging money, you might notice that competition is all kind of paid tools, and there might be an opportunity for a freemium product, right? That's a very more classic way to look at it. So when you enter a market, you want to think about the competition in that way. And I think the third way is, Steve Blank talks about this a lot in customer development, is when you segment, you want to understand, is it an existing market, is it a new market, is it a resegmentation of a market, and your approach to your business is different in all 3 scenarios. There might be a fourth one, I don't remember. And then the last thing would be what I think you don't need to pay attention is they don't really matter, especially when you have competition that's like startup. So basically, I think Mark Andreessen or somebody said, unless there's $100 million in revenue a year going on by any single company, that competition doesn't really matter. I think he's right. You know, it's really, you know, unless it's a serious business, you don't really have competition like that, and they're making money on the thing you're planning on doing. Yep.
There are a lot of entrepreneurs that are getting ideas from the United States or other countries and taking to their own countries or some other country that they see an opportunity. What do you think of those entrepreneurs, of those business ideas, and do you think that's a good business model to have?
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to steal other people's ideas and take them to another country or whatever you want to do, right? Like, that's fine. I mean, it is what it is, right? If that's what you want to do, then it's like a Mark Pincus thing, right? Good for you. You should do that. But at the end of the day, you're still solving problems for people. So if you take that idea to another country, and for whatever reason, culturally or whatever, it doesn't work because you exactly ripped it off, that's on you. That's where I would have major criticism. But if you're going to get inspired and take that idea and try to do the same thing, great. Like, I don't see a problem with that, but you got to make sure you're talking to that customer in that country or in that area and understanding what you need to do differently, right? Because there's always something you need to do differently in most countries, right? So that would be the advice I have and the thought I have. Yeah.
So after all this competition and stealing ideas, so when you think you have something great in your mind, should you talk about or should you keep for yourself? Should you talk to all your friends, like I got an idea everywhere, or should you keep for yourself, or should you choose people to talk about?
Yeah, so I'll give an answer that most people probably won't give you on it, which is some people say, yeah, you know, share it. Some people say don't. I would say that there'll be a point when you don't even have any time to tell anyone anything except your customer. So I'd be dying to get to that point, whatever it takes, right? I mean, I think no one's really lost because they told someone else's idea if they were really good at executing on that idea. If people complain about it when they're not good at executing, right? So for me, it's like, I don't care. I'll tell everyone what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I don't care if they're competition or not, unless I feel like I'm not executing on it yet or well enough yet. That's one way I'd look at it.
So yeah, but at the very beginning, okay, imagine tomorrow I got an idea. Should I start by myself, like choose friends to do it with me? Or how do you choose who join you?
It's very personal.
Yeah, but
who can you trust?
Yeah. But
who do you want to marry?
You can never trust people like that person.
I think it's very personal, right? Like I've seen all kinds of scenarios work.
Okay.
So I don't know how to answer that question for you. Only you know how to answer that question for you. So I would ask you, if you seem like a person that probably doesn't trust anybody. You have kind of long hair, a hat on, some geeky shirt on. Like, I don't think you trust anybody. So that's why you're asking the question, is my assumption. Right? No offense to you, but if you can,
I wonder, like, you know.
Am I right though? You don't trust anyone, do you?
No, I trust people.
Okay, good. Then go find that person you trust and go for it.
Yeah, but sometimes even in your sector, you know, you can trust people, but sometimes they don't have the skills you need, what you're looking for. So should you make new friends which have the skill, or should you pay someone to do it?
Get good at figuring out who you can trust and who you can't trust.
Yeah,
even I still make that mistake, but I'm pretty good at figuring that out pretty fast, right? So I think what you're talking about is trust. That's the word I would use.
Yeah, imagine you need a business guy and you don't have any people you can trust to see business. Like, I don't know.
I mean, then you can always, like, if you're a business guy, there's always some way you can make money, right? So make some money, hire someone with a contract, and then you can trust them because there's a fucking contract, right? You're not gonna have a contract with your co-founder. So, I mean, that's the way I would deal with that. I can start picking on people. Because I'm still here. You want to pick on people?
I'm a nice guy.
No, but like, someone should ask a question. It could be anybody. Everyone's got a question in this room, I know that.
I have a question, actually.
Go for it.
So you were talking about how customers' insight is really important when you try to figure out the problem you're trying to solve. Do you think that customers' insight is also important when you actually implement your idea and when your product is out?
Yeah, I think it's always important because you're always trying to learn about something. So if I have a product out, then it might be important because I have the product out and I'm trying to improve it. So I'm trying to add a feature or, you know, whatever, get more customers. The only way I'm going to do that is really understand the ones I already have. So I think it's always important.
So my next question is then, why did you sell Kiss Insights? Because Kiss Insights was about learning from your customers if your product was good, right?
Yeah, so it's just a tool though. We can still use it because they didn't shut it down, right? And hopefully they'll make it better, right? That's what I'd like to see them do. We sold it because we felt like we weren't doing the right job on improving it because we couldn't focus on it. Because all of our efforts were on our main product. And it didn't make sense to continue keeping it because we thought we would basically shut it down at some point eventually. It was doing fine, we had no reason to shut it down, but if we're not working on it, then we're not being true to our customers and we're not improving the product, right? And that just doesn't make me feel good. So it made more sense to give it to someone that we thought would be, able to do it. Yeah.
So Valley has a huge culture of starting your own thing, but
does it really?
So the second part to that was, like, what do you think about like sites like Flippa.com, right? Or like even the person bought Kiss Insights from you, they clearly thought they could make a profit off of it, or something. What do you think about that?
I think it's easy. It's much easier to buy something that's working than start something new. So if you can find an opportunity to buy something that's working and you have some insight or some reason to buy it because you think you can grow it and make that profitable, or you have money laying around to buy something, buy it. Honestly, if I start something new, if I think I need a user base or I validate an idea and I find something just like it that I can buy, I'll buy it because that gives me a head start. So that's why people do those kind of things. I'm a big fan of Flippa. It's hard to find good stuff on it right now. You usually find good stuff when you find good stuff and go make a direct offer. Not off Flippa, though. Just find something. Yeah.
My question would be, so say you have an idea, right? And you want to get customer development and customer kind of feedback right away. You just what are specific steps you go about doing that? Like surveys or kind of just going asking people in the street? What are specific?
Yeah, read that book I suggested.
Which one?
The cusdev.com, that's the book. In most cases, just talking to people is going to get you more than anything else. In most cases. Even today, with Kissmetrics, we're literally talking to customers every day about something. But it's very deliberate. It's like, oh, we're thinking about adding this thing, right? Let's say it's some new feature or new report because we're an analytics tool. We will go talk to people with certain behavior on the site because we have their data, and not even the data, but we know what they're doing. And we'll try to figure out how to solve their problem better based on something we want to add. So I would say that the closer you are to that customer and actually talking to them, the better you're going to be in most of these cases. Surveying usually should be used just to filter in people you should talk to or help you understand them at a more massive scale when you have lots of them. But still, even today, with the amount of customers we have, we'll still go find customers to talk to. Literally every day, multiple people in the company are talking to customers, not just for customer support, but deliberately besides even sales, deliberately to learn from them. Anybody else? Last chance. Oh. Go for it.
You mentioned customers and talking to customers as launching a product. How often does you should always go back to them when the product is launched?
We do it daily. Daily, every day.
Asking questions,
Someone had a great tweet about customer development. They said you should start your morning talking to a customer. No matter who you are, right? So I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm happiest when I'm talking to my customers because I'm learning all the time, as much as you can.
Would you say that if you had 10 million?
Yep, absolutely.
100?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Have you done that?
I know people that do that at that scale. You better. Yeah.
How do you estimate your market size?
Who cares?
Probably investors.
No. So today, business plans and all that, show them your product, show them how much traction you have, and you can get that without raising money. So That's what I would be focused on over, you know, kind of what you're describing. In fact, you know, in a recent example I had, there was an investor that was somewhat excited about the product. Then all of a sudden the company added an interesting new feature, and the investor got 10 times more excited because of the stupid little freaking feature that was just a prototype. It wasn't even that interesting, but he got excited for some reason, and it's just that consistent, you're improving the product, right? That's the thing they want to see no matter what, right? So I would say that that trumps everything, which is your ability to execute, and them seeing that you can execute, not on writing a business plan, not on doing, you know, spending 2 hours in Excel trying to do market sizing. By the way, you can Google market sizing and figure out how to do it, right? Or you can go talk to some MBA dude and have him do it for you. I've done both, right? And it works if you need to do it. Now, anybody that's asking you that, I'd be asking them, why are you asking me that? You know, and I'd say, if it's an investor asking me, there is a, you know, a certain joke running around all over the valley, all over, that's like, dude, you don't need a business plan, you don't need you don't need to understand market size when it's very obvious, right? That being said, if it's something kind of obscure and they don't understand it for whatever reason, then the market sizing can be useful, right, for them and you. In fact, the business plan, the market size is more of, from my experience at least, in my viewpoint, it's more of somebody trying to understand how you think, and less so anything else. Like, what assumptions did you use to come up with that market sizing? Or what assumptions are you using for that marketing budget in that business plan you have, right? And at the end of the day, like, it is a waste of time, at least in today's general investment world. Yeah.
And my second question is, you said that you started your first businesses at high school, right? And
yeah.
a bunch of businesses during college. Did you have, well, probably you didn't, but what if you didn't have the expertise and the knowledge to make certain decisions, certain important decisions? Probably in your case, you had your father who could help you.
No, my father didn't help me. He's a doctor. He doesn't know shit about business.
Okay.
He's too nice, actually.
So, how did you do that? Did you ask people for advice?
Yeah, I mean...
Intuition?
The most raw answer in my case is I just tried to do it. So for the first 3 years of Crazy Egg, I did all the customer support. For the first year, no, 2 years of, no, year of Kissmetrics, I did all the support. Right? I still look at more feedback than you'd imagine and more support requests than most people might. So to me, it's like, you know, I'm giving that example because if I can't do it or understand something about it, I can't hire someone to do it. That's not fair. That means that I might get the, you know, wool over my eyes or whatever you want to call it, you know, and get swindled, so to speak. So that's the attitude I have. I think advice is great, but you have to know how to ask the right questions, and you also can't take one person's input as a dogmatic thing unless you already know that person well enough to know that they're actually thinking about a lot of the things, right? So I don't, honestly, when it comes to that stuff, like, I can barely even trust myself. Why would I trust someone else, right, about this stuff? I try to learn everything I can and try to sort of scale my knowledge as fast as I can when I have a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Experts are overrated, too. That's fine. Yeah, cool. Thanks, everyone.